The entire setup has just changed because we are in London on a journey trying to prove some measurements on the ancient vases in the Petrie Museum.
But it was very cool to see, just to talk a little bit about like what you're actually doing and like the prep work that you did for this, and just thinking ahead about it, practice runs, all of that kind of stuff was really, really awesome to watch take place. So it's not just like, yeah, we're gonna go in there and done. It was the process of scanning itself was in some ways an engineering project.
The most difficult part of it was that this is really cutting edge technology which we are trying to bring into a very tiny museum. So the space you have in the museum, it's small, and you need a very powerful computer to process all this data. We were not only bringing in the scanning equipment, we were bringing in endoscope, which you had, and also we had gauge calipers to measure basically the wall thickness all around the vase. That was handled by our precision expert, Chris King.
A guy from Florida, Max, who he said, he basically was like, I have access to electron scanning microscopes and I would love to look at some of these vases. So if copper had been at any point used as an abrasion or even to carry an abrasive, there should be tiny, tiny remnants of copper caught in the stone in the tool marks. They came from beneath the step pyramid. A couple of things that we noticed. Number one, no copper at all. And we looked at like 5 or 6 different pieces, but 2 of them had tin or zinc and a strong titanium return.
Thanks for tuning in. I would like to invite you to become a member of my YouTube channel. By joining, you will get exclusive perks, and it's a fantastic way to support the show and enjoy some cool benefits at the same time. For example, recently I traveled to the Petrie Museum in London to scan some pre-dynastic vases. Your support makes that possible. Check it out on my YouTube channel and click the join button. Thanks for considering. This episode was made possible by Shining 3D and its remarkable device, the FreeScan Combo Plus.
Action.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Cheers.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for
It's a
having
pleasure.
us.
Snake Bros, or Kyle and Russ Allen from the Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
That's right.
And the entire setup has just changed because we are in London on a journey trying to prove some measurements on the ancient vases in the Petrie Museum.
That's right. We call this a roadsode.
Why?
It's an episode on the road.
Okay.
A roadsode.
Okay, I get it. Got it.
Turning the Airbnb living room into a studio. Yeah, that's right. You guys worked really hard on this. I sat here and watched. It looked like a lot of work.
I think it was like 2 hours, and we changed everything. The stair, or the chairs, the table, the furnitures.
That's right.
Funny. But yeah, one thing is missing from this Airbnb is my Guinness pine, basically. It's not the same.
Special glass.
It's not the same taste from this glass.
This hourglass shape does some kind of vortex in there, and then it affects the taste that much. Is that how weak Guinness is? That it can't handle a slightly different shaped vase?
No, it's special because it's keeping the aromas and also the taste.
Oh, okay. It's. I'm sorry. I'm not. Oh my God. They're going to destroy me in the comments. You're going to get roasted. I'm getting roasted. They all know I drink Keystone Light. Yeah. And wine glasses have a specific shape. It's true, right? Because of what it does with the aroma.
Yeah.
White wine has a specific shape. Red wine, larger and more vase shaped. Yeah, so I can believe that you may need to do this with beer, maybe.
Yeah, I think some German beers has a special glass which is scratched on the bottom, so it will control the bubbles differently,
Yeah.
and it will gives you a different taste.
It's what on the bottom?
It's scratched.
Oh, scratched. Okay, so yeah, it's nucleation site for the bubbles.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, so in wine, especially champagne, you want very clean. Obviously, the glass itself is smooth everywhere. There's no sharp corners or anything on the inside. And then also you have to make sure its acids are stable, because if any acid crystallizes to the inside of the bottle, when you open it, those crystals become nucleation sites for the bubbles, and it'll overflow, or it changes the taste of the champagne.
I'm just saying you are in the picture.
Chris King's over there. Say hi to Chris, our observer.
And are very appreciated. Good help.
Yeah,
actually.
he's here for the research.
He's the caliper guy and the core guy.
Yep. He brought his brain, which is
Right.
Yeah.
And his touch.
True.
Yeah.
And his eyes.
He can feel 20 microns.
Maybe 50.
50 micro.
50 microns.
By that much.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting us to come and be a part of this process. It's been a great honor, I have to say, because to be a part of this research feels like doing something about the mystery, as opposed to just studying it from afar, wondering about it, discussing it. Obviously, that's all fun, but to actually be a part of pushing the knowledge and understanding forward is really fulfilling. So very much appreciation. And I also have to give you credit for just, having a plan and executing it and just making it all happen. So that's really awesome too.
Very respectable.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit? You decided you wanted to try this, and so what did you do? You had this idea, you wanted to measure museum quality pieces?
Yeah, so basically I'm an engineer. Probably most of my audience know this already, but I was watching Ben's videos from Uncharted X, and that's how I basically knew about the VaseScan project. And I was a little bit, for me it was a little bit underwhelming, or I was disappointed how it was received. So the main problem with those vases was the provenance.
Yeah.
That's what I have understood. And I had a plan to write to all of the museums an email in Europe, basically, because I'm based in Switzerland. So I selected all the museums in Europe which has a significant Egyptian collection, and I just wrote them an email that I would like to collaborate with them and bring the equipment and scan their pre-dynastic hardstone vases, basically, and cores if they have. And few of those responded. A lot of didn't. Yeah. But the Petrie Museum was especially kind and responsive from the beginning. They said they couldn't collaborate, they couldn't support me in my research, but they can offer me a research appointment as an external researcher. I can bring my stuff and I can analyze those vases.
Do you think that might give you a clue on another way to approach the museums? Write them all another email, obviously not Petrie and, but write them and don't say collaboration. Say, I would like to come in as an outside researcher, because maybe a lot of them are hesitating because they don't want to be a collaborator with this kind of stuff, but maybe they will let you come in and do some research, just like the Petrie Museum did.
Yeah, I stated exclusively or explicitly that I'm bringing the equipment on my own expense, and
yeah, but collaboration may imply to them that their name's going to be on whatever you're producing, and instead it's just that you're saying can I come in and look at your pieces?
Yeah, probably that was not a mistake, but it could be refined or
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like the way the Petrie Museum responded gives you a clue on how to maybe try again with some of these other places that
Yeah,
didn't respond.
I will actually. I really want the Louvre in France.
Yeah.
And also, actually, I get another positive response from the Egyptian Museum in Turin, in Italy, basically. They also have a nice collection. But they offered me this possibility if I give them a kind of a research plan. So they need to evaluate those things I would love to achieve and how and with what exactly. And they told me that usually they are collaborating with PhD students and these kind of project. But if I give them the research plan and a clear idea what I want to achieve and how, they are open for that. So I'm hoping I already sent this plan, and probably next year I will get a evaluation or feedback or something.
What kind of engineer are you? Like, what is your degree specifically?
Electrical engineer.
Okay.
So my bachelor and also master, I was focusing on intelligent robots and vehicles. I also learned deep learning, photogrammetry, computer image processing, and this kind of stuff.
Perfect.
So that's why I'm also interested in the scanning and all these things. But mostly as an electrical engineer, I was working in fields of medical, biomedical engineering. I was working with mechanical ventilators, like they're using it for the intensive care.
Yeah.
And recently I was involved in embedded system development, so very low-level electronics firmware, basically.
Okay.
But I have a clue about scanning, processing the data, and also writing scripts to analyze these measurements. So that's why I was very interested in this topic, and I wanted to contribute, and I wanted to bring this entire research forward because I was a bit pissed that it stuck because of the provenance thing.
So you weren't unhappy with the quality of the scans that were being achieved or the analysis that was being done. You were unhappy with the reception it got because of the provenance of the pieces that were being scanned.
Yes, and I really wanted to figure out what the fuck is happening.
Yeah.
So I didn't know the guys who made the scans or who owned the vases. So I had no idea if the provenance problem is legit or not. So I wanted to have a real museum piece scanned.
Right. So the provenance is not in question.
So we cannot have this question anymore. Yeah.
I'm going to wonder if they'll question it anyway. How did Petrie know that all those pieces he got out of Egypt were legit?
Well, with these museum pieces, you can see or you can know in which tomb was it found and where was it found exactly and when was it excavated. Few of them, which we have scanned, almost all of them has a very legit and nice provenance. So I hope it won't be a question anymore. But I think when we have enough data, the provenance question is not even a question anymore.
So you're right. Once enough pieces have been scanned, it stops being a provenance question.
Yes.
One of the original, let's see, I don't know all the details, but there was a response to about the data for the OG vase, but what Ben calls the original scan, the one that, Adam had. And one of the responses was, the guy wrote an article and he was like, here's a picture of an authentic Egyptian vase, right? Well, Matt Bell now owns that exact vase and he's gotten it scanned. And they just don't respond to that data, And I think that's kind of classic in this sort of debate. They just back off. They don't say anything. They don't address it at all when you come back with a counter. But I think what you're trying to do, and this is good, is once you have enough data, they just don't have an argument anymore, or most people just stop listening to them because it sounds like bullshit.
Well, that was what they were asking for, to have some museum pieces scanned, right? So
yeah,
we can do that.
Right. So how many of you scan now?
Well, so far, I think it was 10, roughly 10 vases or pots or whatever, vases, vessels. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Containers, yeah. And also we scanned the Petrie core. That's probably another topic in the future because
Do you think the cores are just as important?
I think so. I really want to close the book on this topic as well. So it's a 150 or almost 200 years old.
It's like 1880s, I think he excavated it and talked about it.
It's a very long debate, and
I do think it's connected. The vases were cored, right?
Yeah.
So some of those cores in the Petrie Museum may have come from vases.
There's actually on plate 8 in Pyramids and Temples of Giza in the book that he pictured Petrie core number 7 is another core that has it's actually the outside of the stone, and it's the bottom of the core that was never broken away from the stone, but the outside profile looks like the bottom of the vase. Okay. And so when we go back, I was going to request that they could, if they had it in their archives. It's on that same plate.
they have a lot of cores, but I didn't see any others than the Petrie core. So the Petrie core is the only core on display what I have seen. Have you seen any other cores?
Well, you showed me the picture of the tray full of cores, but you said most of those are alabaster.
I think it's not on display.
No, I don't think
Or
it's on
I
display.
couldn't find it.
I don't think I saw any other
They have a
cores.
lot of cores, probably not granite, because I asked them if they have another granite core. That's the only granite core, the Petrie one, the Petrie number 7. But they have porphyry, basalt, alabaster, and these cores.
Basalt would be a good one to scan. You could get one, I think.
Yeah,
It's also glass-like, so it's,
I have a basalt core on the list. So you can select 10 objects per research appointment, basically, and that's what I did. And also, thanks for Ben from Uncharted X pointing out some vases which would be interesting to scan. I have also searched there. Petrie Museum has a quite nice online collection, so you can search based on,
oh, like a directory.
yeah, kind of. You can search based on material, periods like Nagada or early dynastic or whatsoever, object type, so you can search for vessels, vases, cores, holes. Yeah, so it's a nice collection, but it's not easy to handle for the first sight. So you have to try a bit how to search in the database, but it's a nice one. But Ben had already kind of a list which would be first to scan.
So yeah, going back to how this all happened, like you, not only did you write the emails and send them out, but also you came on the Uncharted X Snake Bros tour.
Yeah, this year, March 2024.
And you built a team.
Well, I hinted the information that I have this opportunity, and if you want to, you can join. And it was actually well responded or well received, because a lot of people from the trip was or immediately interested. So I think we had Chris King here and maybe 4 or 3 other people. You also, you brought someone from the previous trip, the one trip before March. So it's like the people have quite high interest in this scanning thing.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very top topic right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think anyone who ends up on one of the Egypt tours that we do they're filtered for people that have a high interest in this subject already, because they're there because of Uncharted X and because of the stuff we talk about, right? So, and that's the stuff we talk about, are these kind of engineering mysteries, right? So they're already geared towards that. So yeah, and there are some really smart people that come on those tours.
Yeah, geologists, engineers.
Yeah, not us, you
No.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just writing emails and scanning. So, yeah, but
But it was very cool to see just just to talk a little bit about like what you're actually doing, that there are obstacles, there are difficulties to overcome in the process that you're attempting to do. And like the prep work that you did for this, and, just thinking ahead about it, practice runs, all of that kind of stuff was really, really awesome to watch take place. So it's not just like, yeah, we're going to go in there and done. It was, the process of scanning itself was in some ways an engineering project.
Yeah, because I think the most difficult part of it was that this is really cutting edge technology, which we are trying to bring into a very tiny museum. So the space you have in the museum, it's small, and you need a very powerful computer to process all this data. And also, we were not only bringing in the scanning equipment, we were bringing in endoscope, which you had, and you did the endoscopic work trying to capture the vessels from the inside, because the scanner cannot really capture everything from the inside. And also we had gauge calipers to measure basically not the concentricity, but eventually this is the information we can get from these measurements, but it was measuring the wall thickness all around the vase. That was handled by our precision expert, Chris King. He went up.
Yeah.
So it was a very nice teamwork, I think, and I couldn't do it alone. So that's 100%. I couldn't do it alone because we have 5 hours per appointments, and we did tons of measurements on these vases. So
Yeah, and all of you guys were practicing before we went up there.
Yeah, we were practicing
on a toothbrush holder. That was great. I'm sitting here watching. That is the most measured and scanned toothbrush holder in the world.
Yeah, it was kind of a marble.
It looked,
IKEA something.
I thought Adam had it. Like I didn't even realize.
Like, where did you guys get this?
It's like it was
holding
he goes,
toothbrushes.
it was upstairs in the bathroom. This was great.
We can also talk a bit about the scanner. The accuracy of the scanner is 20 microns, which is in your metrics.
I can't remember, but I remember using the conversion rate when I was trying to also look for, because I was like, maybe we can find a benchtop, CT scanner. Nope. They actually have some that they call benchtop CT scanners, but they weigh almost 1,000 pounds. So it was like, what bench are you going to put this on?
A broken one.
Yeah, broken bench. That's right.
Yeah, tenths, hundreds, thousands, 10,000. So it's roughly 8 10,000ths of an inch. Good.
Did they both turn off?
No. I was checking because you remember one of those turned off.
Oh, really? It kind of looks like one of them's just going.
Is it panning around?
Yeah, it's very hard to give a quality podcast without a studio
Yes, it is.
on the travel.
Yeah. But with our powers combined.
Yes, thanks for the help and for the lot of equipment you brought.
Yeah, my bag, like we luckily had our bags basically all right there at the threshold of weight that we could bring.
And the instruments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we still haven't used. Yep. This is the first time they've gotten out of the cases to be visual props for the podcast.
Nice props.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 20 microns and an inch.
8 10,000ths of an inch.
8 10,000ths, yeah. And we had to practice a lot to don't pick up noise and to reach actually all the, for example, under the lip, there are some vases. So these vases are very tiny, like 10 centimeters, 6 centimeters tall. And to get under the lip in every direction, that can be challenging. I had to figure out at home how to elevate the vase or the object on a stand which has markers, because the scanner has to track at least 4 markers at a time, so it can
Yeah, you built a rig to do the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
You custom designed it.
Yeah, because you cannot really find those available on the market currently. I mean, these kind of things to have the markers also elevated. It's like dodecahedrons, I guess, which you can basically put the marker. It's like a sticker you can put on this dodecahedrons, and I also designed some poles for those to elevate them, because if I go down on the to scan the
When you're
lower
looking up
part
at
of the lip,
yeah.
then the scanner has to see the markers.
And so it has to see them up high.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they have to be randomized. You were telling me like they can't put them in a pattern.
Yeah,
And so they all also have to remain stationary relative to the vase. So you're not walking around the room and scanning this vase. You have to move the vase.
it's a turntable, and yeah, so a lot of preparation.
It kind of reminded me of some VR setups use this. Like you put stationary bases around the room where you're going to use a VR headset. And that way you can move around in the room, and the base stations are the markers. And so that's how the computer knows the attitude of the headset. And so it knows which way you're looking and all that kind of stuff. It can respond. I mean, like it's similar, right? Because I was watching you scan. It was really cool. He has this round thing and all these markers and markers on poles, and some of them are just dots on the table. Other ones are on these dodecahedrons. The vase is in the middle, and he's scanning and slowly rotating this thing. You can see the markers in the screen moving around, and the vase is getting built by the lasers as the scan goes on. It was really interesting to watch. Yeah. And it's high resolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can set the resolution between 0.02 millimeters and 0.5.
Yeah. So I'm interested in you running experiments with objects that are polished, that are covered in dust and stuff like that. Like how you would, things that you would experience out in the field, right?
Out of field, you cannot put markers all around, so you have to use the infrared
Right. But still,
feature.
you need to make the object dusty. Make it real dusty and then put hand marks on it, smear it. I'm serious. Because it's going to this is going to affect the scan, right? A lot, especially if the dust is silica dust, which is what it is, which is highly reflective.
Yes.
So
The reflection can be tricky.
yeah, and it's going to be a scatter reflection. The dust will scatter the reflections, and then the polished surface will tend to bounce it back too. So I'm just saying it would be fun experimenting. Scanning, using infrared scanning on a reflective surface that's covered in reflective dust.
The easiest thing I have ever seen.
Yeah, before you go do it in the field, you should try this a few times. And
Yeah.
we'll make a box.
First, we'll just make a giant polished granite box.
Okay. I have one in the garden, so I will
Then
try.
we'll put it in a cave and leave it there for a few thousand years. And then we'll test.
Yeah.
Are you saying he shouldn't test it?
No, I'm just being ridiculous.
Okay. But there are some sprays for very reflective surfaces or objects which has these reflective surfaces. So you can spray it. It won't be reflective anymore. You can scan it, but after a few minutes, it will evaporate or it will disappear from the object. So it's like a residue less or not. It's not leaving residue on the object, which is very important.
So we'll all be down there with gas masks on.
Yeah.
And then it's going to smear the dust in. You need Windex first.
This is what I was saying. A pallet of big 5-gallon buckets full of Windex and a pallet of paper towels.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds goofy, but I think these are real issues. Like,
Yeah, these are problems. Yeah.
yeah. I didn't know about the spray. That's interesting. It'll make a polished reflective surface non-reflective for a brief period until it evaporates. That's cool. But you will have to get rid of the dust first. Otherwise, you're just going to make mud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's another question if you want to measure the things accurately. I don't know how thick this layer can be, even the dust or even the spray. So maybe it's on this micron level, which can
Oh yeah.
modify the results.
Yeah, that's
technically.
true.
So yeah, it's the scanning thing is a very, very complex topic and very, very hard to get decent and very quality scans. But we are
It's all-
working hard on that.
It's also possible that the scatter will just, you're getting so many data points that you'll get enough good data and the scatter will be noise that you can reduce, right? You're already having that issue in your, like, how are you dealing with noise in the scans already?
So we don't want to remove data from the scans because we don't want to modify the actual data we collected. But you can see clearly when some weird reflection happened next to the object and it's floating next to the object but not connected to the object, you can clearly remove those. So you can connect the domain of the object, every point which belongs to the object, and you can remove all the other which are not close to so considerably noise.
Yeah. Can you talk about the difference between that and CT and the problem with CT scanning?
Yeah, the CT scan had these problems that it's picking up points from the interior of the vase wall, and since it's not a homogeneous material, it can scatter the X-ray beams and it can make some noise in the inside. What really belongs to the wall, or what is the real noise behind the wall in the inside of the vase? That's not a obvious topic. That's not an obvious problem to solve because. Do I make any sense?
Yes.
Because eventually we don't want to remove points. How can we decide what's a noise which is very close to the wall or what's the actual wall
Yeah.
data point?
So any CT scanning, what he had told me before, they're removing data and it's arbitrary.
Yeah.
They don't know really where the wall is on the inside, but it's sort of an arbitrary judgment, and each person, maybe a different person, would remove less or more.
Yeah, it brings in a bias.
That's just for the inside surface, not the outside one?
Just for the inside. The outside is clearly, that's fine,
Okay.
but the inside is tricky.
Because the X-ray has to pass through the material and sometimes it's getting, yeah, okay.
Because it's not a homogeneous material and the beams can be scattered differently with the crystals and these stuff. I never done CT scans. The team who is working on it, and I'm working with this team, Adam Young, basically he did these scans and the analyst had these problems with the CT scans. So it's
Would MRI work on this material at all? I know it's a far more expensive and lengthy procedure than CT, but
I think
it's also more accurate, is it?
I'm
I
not
don't know
sure.
anything about.
I'm not sure.
I
I
thought
think
one was magnetic.
MRI I think MRI wouldn't even work here. But that's a good question. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know.
Okay. Can you scan stone with the MRI? I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
The other idea was for the wall thickness, for example, because I'm really fascinated about some of these vases which has very consistent wall thickness, so the deviation is very low. I wanted to bring some ultrasonic thickness gauges.
Yes.
And the problem with those that you have to calibrate it for the stone, and it's also not consistent. Since the stone is not consistent, you cannot calibrate it for an inconsistent material, because to measure the sound wave and the speed how it travels in the material, I think it couldn't measure it accurately.
It's going to be hitting prisms the whole time and changing its direction. Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a good point. None of the vases are made out of any kind of, I mean, it's stone, but they seem to go out of their way to choose like massively inconsistent materials, right? Like this stuff that has giant crystal inclusions in it, they picked it on purpose.
probably. Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful material, but it also makes it difficult to do like a ultrasound on it.
Yeah. I cannot imagine how difficult it is to work with. To carve it and to
The breccia vases, like
Yeah.
chunks of flint and all kind of quartz in there, and yeah,
Yeah, it's not an easy topic, but I was asking myself during the preparation, why no one has done this before?
yeah,
Why no one has? I mean, yes, the scanner we are using, it's a very recent product, so I think it came out this year, probably. And to have this portable accuracy, let's say, it's very new. But still, why no one has really scanned those vases with a structured light scan in the museum? I had this question, and I think I found the answer because it's not easy.
yeah.
It's-
You're finding out
really
why.
hard.
It's really hard to bring all those
Well,
computer and
Yeah.
tools, and it's just not an obvious problem to solve.
but maybe another reason, has there been an Egyptologist or archaeologist since Petrie who has really asked this kind of question about these objects?
That's a good question.
I mean, maybe there has been.
Petrie says clearly they had the lathe. I mean, that's what he said. And like ever since then, they're like, nope.
Yeah. So I feel like that's part of the answer of why no one has done it, because they don't think there's a reason to do it. They have the answer. No, and Kyle and I talk about this on our show all the time. Like, the problem with like definitive answers is you stop asking questions.
Yeah.
And so no one has asked the question, like, how accurate are these really, since Petrie? Well, up until Adam and Ben and, these guys got this project going.
Actually, Chris was explaining in the museum because the archaeologist who is responsible for these objects, she was watching us to don't destroy the vases.
Yeah.
And Chris was talking to her. He was explaining to her that why we are doing this and what are the implications and why it could be important. And actually, she was surprised. She didn't know about it, but she got interested.
Ah, good. Yeah.
And actually, it was very, very positive in the museum that they were very kind. They were helping us, and they were actually not telling that only two of us can stay in the museum because there is a restriction that the space is not too big. So you have to be careful because of we brought in cables, extra stands, a lot of equipment, and there was not much space. But they were very kind to let all of us in and help us. Even I think you asked for a fragment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was bringing out.
Yeah, she went look. She just offered, like, I had mentioned it, and she was like, "Oh, we might have that. Do you want me to look for it and see if we got?" I was like, "Heck yeah!" She looked it up in their database, found one of them, and brought it out, and he scanned it. So
Nice.
really cool. Yeah, they were very accommodating, and it was really cool to see when you got your equipment all set up, and they were observing it and just like very complimentary of like, this is awesome. Like they
Yeah,
just
that's what they
thought it was
want,
great.
right?
Yeah, they right when we got there, they were like, research. It was exciting. It felt good.
You know why? It's because it was lasers. As soon as people see the lasers, they're just like, yeah, science is being done.
Okay, next time disco. Yeah, so it's a very amazing experience to, as a non-archaeologist, okay, engineer, but non-archaeologist, experience this excitement from the archaeologist in
Yeah.
the museum, and they are letting you touch their objects. Not that way. So I was very excited all day. I couldn't sleep much the night before because I was full of excitement, and yeah, my hands were shaking when I was handling the core.
Yeah.
They were extremely, how can I say?
Anxious, worried about
Worried
it.
about the core, yeah.
Yeah.
When Adam tried to make a selfie, they were not so happy about it because there was one rule that you should handle all the objects with two hands at the same time.
Gloved, two
Yep.
hands over the table.
Yes.
Yeah.
Over the they lay down these foam pads. Everything, all work is done over these pads. So the moment you pick it up from the table and have to move it, or pick it up from the cart, you move it over to the foam pad immediately.
Yeah.
But the core is their most prized possession because there's so much interest in it, which I found that to be.
They told me that's one of their star objects.
Yeah.
Which
I
is
can believe it.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to see, there's no way they'd share this, but I would love to see the list of people who have come in to research the core specifically. I think that would just be an interesting list of names.
Probably. We heard interesting stories, which we won't tell. But yeah, how the people were handling the core, were researching it. But yeah, it was a very, very special day and moment of my life, actually.
So you're going back.
Yes, we have 2 appointments.
You have another list of objects, or are you going to redo some of the ones you were doing before, or you got whole new ones you're going to...
Maybe we will redo a few one, because not every vase was interesting from the bottom point of view.
Yeah.
So the bottom usually is used, damaged, it's heavily worn on the bottom. And
So difficult to get...
it's not really interested for us.
Yeah. Difficult to get measurements of precision on an object that's got that much damage.
Yes, and to have the full object scanned with the bottom, you have to turn the object. So you need to do 2 scans.
Yeah.
One with a normal position and then turn it upside down and scan the bottom as well. And you can align these 2 scans. But I'm a bit afraid that by aligning these 2 scans, we can bring in some error which is within the margin of the accuracy. I'm not sure. I will consult with the engineers, because I'm in contact with the engineers, and I was actually trained by the company's engineers who are producing the scanner. And also I can just ask any questions basically from them, because they are helping us. But yeah, I was afraid of this error which the alignment can bring in, and therefore we can analyze it separately, but rather not
Put them
combined.
together. Yeah.
But the circularity, the concentricity, the perpendicularity can be measured without the really bottom. So it's not a problem. That's why I made the stand, so we can put the bottom on the stand and we can scan all around the bottom, and we just miss the complete...
Yeah. The actual standing surface. Yeah. So what are you going to do with the data?
Delete it. It's too serious. I have to delete it.
This is incredible. Yeah. Delete. Go back to my life.
Analyze it and delete it. No, we need more time. We need weeks to properly analyze the data, and we are thinking of publishing.
Okay, I was going to say, do you have any plans to, in the future, open source the data? Just like, yeah, make it...
I really want to publish something with the Petrie Museum together, because this will bring in more credibility, and I think I will share the scans eventually with them, because that's the fair use basically of their resources and objects. But I would love to have a joint publication with the Petrie Museum, because I'm just dreaming of this since I'm a kid, to do something related to Egyptology and this stuff. It is so cool. And besides of that, it would be really credible, I think, to have their opinion.
Yeah.
And also to discuss the implications.
And it could also, open doors in the future with a publication in a prestigious paper or in a prestigious journal. And you can hopefully gain more access.
But what I'm asking though is about like just how the scan of the original vase, Adam's original vase, there was a high resolution version of that released for anyone to download, and they can look at it in Blender on their computer or whatever. Do you plan to do that eventually with the data that you've gotten?
Yeah, I think that's the fair thing to do.
Yeah.
To release this information.
Let everybody look at it, analyze it if they want. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Tell us that we are fuckers.
Yeah.
And it would be cool. I mean, still like the Petrie Museum can also add it to their, when you go to their website, you can, that would be cool.
Print the Petrie core as a merch.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Print it out, dude. That would be awesome if everybody could print the core. I would definitely have one of those.
As a necklace.
Yeah. You can check it for a spiral yourself.
And the core.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, so it's amazing. It's an amazing journey, and I just love it. And actually, I'm still cannot really. How can I say? I cannot really believe that we are here together, because I went on your tours first. I have to be honest. I didn't know about you before the Egypt tour.
Sure.
I was listening and watching to Ben's videos. But I was actually surprised that you are not engineers, but in my opinion, you are thinking as scientists. So
Thanks, man.
the
Thank
way
you.
you think, like reasonably, you are questioning even yourself and even other people from the community who are probably on the same side, but thinking from other aspects. You are still questioning those aspects.
Yeah.
And not just going to one direction. So I think that's quite remarkable. And you also want to do something physical. So you want to do something with your hands. So you want experimenting.
Yeah.
You have a workshop
Yes.
full of opportunities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We have a machine shop that I will be learning how to run. Yeah. It's ready to go.
That was an interesting opportunity that just came out of nowhere. Our listeners will know that we work at a grape farm and a winery, and
Sorry, what? Rape farm?
grape farm. Yeah, we're farming grapes. We're farmers, and we're always we always need tools. We're fixing stuff and whatever, building things. We're doing like anything under the sun. We've done so much stuff out there. It's not just like farming just requires all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's an event space. There's always things breaking. There's always something that needing to be built or modified or whatever. So our boss just one day is like, hey, I got this lead on an entire machine shop that went up for sale. And he sent me an email about it, and he was like, do we need this? And I'm like, yes. But, I'm just like, I would love to have that. But
What do you have there? What do you have in the shop? Like lathe?
there's a Bridgeport milling machine and a Monarch lathe, and they're manual operated, but they have digital readouts, and there is a whole set of toolboxes full of all these different bits, and there's various other small tools like grinders and many different tools. But the original machine shop, the guy was building miniature cars, like building the engines and he was building everything on these miniature vehicles, like perfect models running on gasoline engines, like small gasoline engines. So he passed away, and so his shop is sort of tailored for working with really small and manufacturing very small parts. So there's all kinds of like small grinding tools and etching and and he built all kinds of jigs to hold various other tools for specific processes which he was needing, because obviously you just can't go out and buy something to make a random miniature engine part in your house. He had to build a lot of his tools. So I don't know what they all do, but it's, you can kind of figure out like, okay, it's grinding here, it's cutting there, or whatever. But the other cool thing is my boss's uncle was a machinist professionally, and he machined parts for NASA and all this. I'm sure he had a lot of clients, but he definitely machined parts for like the lunar module and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. So he organized the purchase of the machine shop, and then he set it all up, and he's teaching us how to run the equipment. So it's pretty cool. I'm just like, this is awesome. There's like barely enough time to do stuff, but I've since shown him the videos about the vases and things that Ben has done, and he's fascinated by it as well. And I'm like, we got to make one.
So what's the plan? You will make one from which kind of material?
Any material at first. Just to get to know the lathe and the milling machine, and just learn those tools. It's nice to work with some cheap, easy material that you can run through and break stuff and screw it up and just
like
put another
acrylic
one.
or aluminum. And
Yeah,
but it'd be fun to try one in concrete.
We have a lot of materials, steel and aluminum and brass and things that were from that guy's workshop in their stock materials. But obviously you can just
cool.
Yeah, you can just get a wooden dowel rod and put it in the lathe and try to make a vase, obviously just to learn the equipment. But, yeah, and you got, learn all, because you have to take the bits off and put a different bit on, and there's all kinds of stuff to do, and then, figure out ways to make it good curves, because you got these you can move the machine on one axis with a little crank, and then you can move it on the other axis. So it's going to be a learning curve to get good at this.
And then it'll be like, how do we take a plan, like whether it's drawn or it's in CAD or something, and then replicate that on this manual device,
which I've been talking to Chris about that, and Chuck, and now I can't remember the name of this thing. Chuck and Chris were both talking about it, but it's basically a simple device that you can build just with some levers and pins, where you can have like a big, like say you can make the profile of a vase very large. Say you can make it 10 feet long. That's the outside profile of a vase. And then you have a stylus.
Oh yeah.
That you can push along the profile, and it scales down over there to the machine. So you're cutting, and then your precision is actually, you can have mistakes on your model profile that almost are invisible on the small one, because you're reducing the size of those mistakes. So this is kind of one of the things they were suggesting. We could build something like that in there.
That's what that workshop was in the place when we first moved back to Texas. They had the wood side and the metal side, remember? Mm-hmm. And they were telling us like they built the model.
They built models out of wood for the SR-71 Blackbird.
Yeah, for the SR-71. And then they would replicate it in metal after they tested the wood version, and then they would use this big wood model to make the smaller part out of metal with a stylus.
Yeah. But let me rewind the story. How did you get into the alternative history or this kind of theories? How did you get interested in Egypt? Where your story began?
Yeah. Well, for me, I mean, I was always interested in artifacts. Like when we grew up, we would find arrowheads and stuff in the creeks and all around. And I've always just been obsessed with rocks and finding arrowheads, flipping over rocks and whatever out in the woods. So anywhere we went, I would go out in the woods and look for arrowheads all the time, and building a collection of artifacts. And then that grew into like learning about the campsites and like actually, you know, when you're a kid, you're just like a cool rock. And I would literally make bows and arrows and like tie my real arrowheads onto them and shoot them into the woods and lose them. But eventually it turned into an obsession with this. It's almost like the sensation when you find an artifact that you somehow just like warped into this past scenario that is long gone, but it's like, I don't know, there's this sensation of just like somebody was here and they made this and they were doing something with it, right? It's and you pick it up and it's, you know, it's ancient. Yeah. And the last guy that, because no one else picked it up, so you know you're the first person to touch this since
the ancient guy lost it.
Yeah, the arrowhead. So that has been, and then like I was saying, then it goes from just the artifact to the context that the artifact is in, the campsite. You know, why are they concentrated here? And of course, that turns into like, now you're looking at geography. Oh, there's like this hole down here in the ground that used to be a spring, and you can tell by the way the layers have been eroded that this was an old spring, and there's happens to be a Indian mound, well, a midden mound of a trash pile there from where they were camping. You start to find those around the place and kind of just, I don't know, it's this fascination with this lost world. That was kind of my initiation, I think, into just being generally oriented to this type of stuff. But then you bring in this guy. I love mystery, right? Since I was young, I have consumed mystery through fiction a lot of times. I read a lot of science fiction, and a lot of the older sort of hard sci-fi was based around like there would be some cosmological mystery, usually a new discovery of some kind. Like a lot of the really good old sci-fi authors did this. They would read the journals of what was being newly discovered, and then there would be this strange concept like a neutron star. Like, what the hell is this? And they'd read about it, and then they would write some story about this mysterious object out in space and people that are going to go look at one or whatever, you know, and I loved that. And this is in fiction, you know, but they were writing about real mysteries, cosmological ones. And you know, there's mysteries here on Earth too, but like eventually I found out that there's lots of strange mysteries in our own past. And I started to read about those, and like then next thing you know, you're reading about like ancient civilizations that have sort of unexplained architecture or structures, or like how do they move these blocks? How do they make them? And the mystery arises out of our concept of their technological level compared to the architecture we're looking at, right? So then you start to ask yourself, well, is there really a mystery here, or have we just misconstrued the past? Like we don't really know how advanced they were. The other possibility is that maybe some of these things are much older than their, you know, than the attribution is. Like, in other words, some of these structures are attributed to the wrong peoples. And that possibility arises from when you're looking into the mysteries of these, and then you start reading the myths, which is just the historical, the what people of the time thought was history, we now call myths, right? But you start reading their history and you see them talking about very much older civilizations, or that, you know, there was a time of the gods or whatever. So then you start to ask yourself like, well, maybe there is a really big mystery here. And like, that's what kind of got me into it. And then I'm looking at, drawings of the pyramids and their interior structures, and you're like, what is this thing? Like, these little pathways, it doesn't look like a tomb. I remember one evening Kyle was up at my house, and I'm like, look at this interior structure of the Great Pyramid. And he's like, what the hell? And I'm like, yeah, what is this? It looks like they built something and then covered it over in a triangle, right? And it's so that just kind of leads you down a path. Once you investigate one of them, whether it's you're looking at Peru or you're looking at Egypt, does this to a lot of people. You look at Egypt, you see that there's
a lot of unanswered questions, and that leads you to the rest of the world, like the Peruvian stuff, some things in Greece, Malta, Easter Island.
And visiting these sites is kind of building a skill in you to realize or to notice other similar features in other places, which is kind of odd or not really fitting to the narrative.
And like spending a lot of time studying the architecture, studying their imagery, their writing, the things that they chose to carve into stone. Once you've spent a lot of time looking at that for all these different cultures, you begin to see patterns. There's similar imagery. And why should that be? Now it's more easily explained with when you have Egypt, Sumeria, Assyria, Babylon, Babylonia. Those are all really close to each other, and they obviously influenced each other. But the fact that they're all showing sort of winged sky people is just really interesting. And then you're looking in some stuff in Central and South America, and you're like, there's winged sky people over there too, and it's so then,
what is going on?
And then of course, then you're like, wait a minute, are we looking at aliens? And then you start looking into the UFO subject, and then that's a whole other rabbit hole that just completely will, just spit. You can, but it's like that. But off in Egypt, the pyramid itself, just that central Great Pyramid, is like it's like a gateway drug. You start looking at it because it's huge and it's amazing and everyone knows about it and it's weird, and then that will send you down all these rabbit holes, and you can spend the rest of your life asking these questions and
literally
driving yourself crazy. Yeah.
So we've argued with each other since I can remember.
Yeah.
We were always big arguers.
And then no, we're not.
I didn't realize that so far.
So when we started both like really looking into all this stuff, it really, I he was always coming down and showing me some crazy stuff that he was researching, and then we'd end up arguing about it.
Yeah.
Like how could it have been done? Blah, blah, blah. And through those sessions of arguing about it, we kind of came up with a sort of, almost like a philosophy of how to discuss these mysteries with each other.
Yeah, a productive way to discuss them.
More productive. Yeah. And it just, and then obviously it wasn't just the ancient mysteries. We're also diving into physics. Like I got really interested in physics, mainly because I was working with audio in the studio. And I really wanted to understand like the acoustical physics and try to really grasp like what was going on.
The fuck is this, World War III or what?
Yeah, it's World War III, and my light died. Those cameras probably turned off. Whatever. Road sewed.
Just copters and I don't know. Probably it's not going to the mics, but sorry. Continue.
We could take a break. Road sewed and fix the light problems.
So,
productive conversations.
Yeah, so we were going, like, both of us ended up going down the physics rabbit hole and really trying to do a lot of research into physics, and then geology as well. And it became kind of like really fun I was never much of a school person. I didn't like school. I just wanted to be free and play rock and roll and shit. But, yeah, it was really fun to explore these topics and find really good teachers, through either books or videos or whatever. Mostly we were listening to audiobooks at work, and podcasts and stuff like that, and then reading when time was available. But it's sort of the combination of all these things. We were going into physics, and then we were starting to learn like really what is the scientific method? What do these really good scientists do, and what is their philosophy, and how do they look at their work?
You read a lot of Petrie? You told me.
Yeah. But I think for me, really,
Feynman.
Richard Feynman was like a huge influence on the way I think about science, or how to actually use the scientific method in everyday life to like kind of get rid of things that are not true. And so that we sort of adopted that in looking at in the ancient world. And
Manly P. Hall also gave some great lectures, and he was very entertaining to listen to. He's like the Feynman for esoteric subjects. Like, very entertaining.
Audiobooks, usually, or
lots of audiobooks.
Lectures that he gave. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For him specifically, but man, lots
Feynman.
of audiobooks.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a job. We spent years actually running heavy machinery out in the woods where there was no cell service. So
When you had time to.
All
hours
day.
and hours and hours all day. You can just listen.
Download a whole bunch of stuff before you went out there because there's
So
no
we would
data.
both like go and download books, and even I went so far as like getting PDFs and just having the like computer read them. But we would share all that.
I was traveling a lot to work, so I was commuting like hours. I'm sure you do as well.
Yep.
And I find myself, okay, this is just wasting of time. So I started to use Audible
Yep.
and started to listen to Graham Hancock, Robert Schoch, and these books. I think first Robert Schoch's book was the first, the Sphinx erosion, Origin of the Sphinx, I think. And that's why I was getting to these. I got interested in these tours in Egypt because I really wanted to experience and see those places with my bare eyes.
Yeah.
But speaking of science, you and Ben did something very interesting on the vases, or you had some vase fragments.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ben was contacted by a guy from Florida, Max, who he said, he basically was like, I have access to electron scanning microscopes, and I would love to look at some of these vases with the microscope, but probably can't look at an entire one. So maybe if you have pieces, and we do have pieces.
We took a vase and just
brought in the pieces. Worth it. Do it for science.
5,000 years old.
Yeah. So yeah, we have fragments. So Ben agreed and Ben contacted us and was like, you guys need to go down there with me. Like, we should bring our fragments down there. Kyle couldn't go.
And the vases?
Yeah, and the vases as well. Kyle couldn't go. We were kind of right in the midst of the fermentation process for this year's harvest. But it was kind of a long weekend, so Kyle was like, well, you should go. So I went with Ben, and we went down there, and it was really awesome. He is a very interesting guy. Max is, first of all. He's working on like fusion, and yeah.
It's home?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He's working on a kind of I'm probably going to get this wrong, but basically some kind of ultrasonic application for controlling very small fusion reactions within an enclosed, he's doing something small, trying to do something that will like basically a home fusion battery, right? Tiny and controlled. He also has a gigantic Tesla coil in his garage, and he was using it to run experiments to see if he could change the local decay rate of radioactive material.
Interesting guy. Yeah, indeed.
He's got a PhD in physics. He was at the University of Pittsburgh. Like he's legit. But he's also he's like, I want to do garage science. Like, he was like, he told us he felt too restricted in the academic environment. He was like, I wanted to do like very interesting edge case things, and they just don't want to do that there. So he's like, screw this. I'll rebuild electron microscopes for money and try to make fusion in my spare bedroom. So a really cool guy. So yeah, he when we went into his house, he's got 2 microscopes right there in the living room, and there's a third one in pieces over there, like that he's working on. So we spent 2 days with him, doing sort of spot checks on the various fragments we bought brought with us with the microscope, just like sort of exploratory, nothing, what's the word, comprehensive or...
So not a grid search, but...
Right. No grid searches. It was just like, let's put this one in and check it out. We'll look at this spot, look at tool marks, look for any anomalies. And we kind of did that with each piece, put them in and look at the interesting areas. Couple of things that we noticed. Number one, no copper at all, which is what the first thing he was looking for, because he's like, that whatever tool they used, if it was metal, it should have left fragments of itself caught in the crystalline matrix of the stone. And even if it's very ancient, there should still be some remnants, right? Because this is an electron microscope, and it can look at very small fragments. So if copper had been at any point used as an abrasion or even to carry an abrasive, there should be tiny, tiny remnants of copper caught in the stone in the tool marks. No copper. The microscope itself was I don't know if they all do this. I guess they do, but it was able to.
It's a mass spec.
Yeah, you could pinpoint any spot and get a mass spec for that area, and it would tell you the elemental components that you were looking at. And so we learned a bunch about how to look for anomalies, and like what do they look like under the microscope, and because the stone has this crazy texture built in, it's like part of the stone, and then there's all the crystalline fragments in there that are causing weird reflections with the beam. So they look like anomalies, but they're not. We're like, what is that? You pinpoint it. It give the reading. It's the same rock that we've been looking at the whole time. But occasionally you would see something, and we found like 4 or 5 of these, mostly on 2 different pieces. And we looked at like 5 or 6 different pieces, but 2 of them had what you could see like a long, narrow splinter of something that was a complete, like very bright under the electron microscope. And it was like, this is tin, or zinc. We found a splinter of zinc in one of them.
Because metals are usually bright under the microscope.
Yeah, very bright return. And a strong titanium return in a couple of places.
Oxide?
No, not oxide. The oxygen reading was there, but it's very low, just like it was a background noise, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was weird, like that, and none of them were oxidized. So strange.
Where did you get these fragments, or do you know how they were held?
So that was they weren't protected from contamination, right? So this is a part of it, but they came from beneath the step pyramid.
It's quite dirty down there.
Yeah. And but yeah, there was no.
We don't, it's unknown what tools they're working with to dig also.
Right.
And
archaeologists are down there using modern metals. I don't know if they have titanium digging tools or not, but
did you try to contaminate specifically and then clean it off, or somehow clean the entire fragment from these fragments?
We didn't
and check again.
No, so we didn't do anything like that. Like, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't systematic. This was just a sort of a
preliminary
entirely. We left the 2 most interesting fragments with him to do a more comprehensive survey of them. He also stressed to us that he was like, I rebuild these. I'm not an expert in using them, right? So he's like, now that we've looked at them and we found some interesting things, maybe we should find somebody who's an expert in the like usage and analysis of the data. But yeah, I think it was an excellent, thing to do. And
but this brings up a possible avenue to again push forward this research, which would be to, if we can get in contact with the archaeologists digging under the step pyramid and explain the necessity of like uncovering a brand new fragment, removing it with the least amount of contamination possible, putting it in a container, and then having it examined.
Because we know that it's still under excavation.
It
It's not
is. Yeah,
completely excavated.
That's right.
That's right.
They're still excavating, so they are still finding fragments, and they will probably still find whole vases, fragments that would have been contaminated, could have been contaminated in the Third Dynasty or whenever, but they, you know what I'm saying?
They shouldn't be contaminated with tin or
Right.
titanium.
So it
Kind
will
of
still tell
intact
you something.
regarding the contamination, intact vases.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. So it was interesting that there was never a copper return. And again, it was a spot check. So it's possible that he may find copper when he does a more comprehensive scan of them. But
Do you know the material of these fragments? Mostly porphyry and granite.
it was, well, I mean, I know the elemental returns was basically granite material. Like one of them was
Like a quartz.
very high quartz, like high silica. And then, the other ones were like obviously lots of silica and some like tiny amounts of aluminum. It's basically what you get when you're looking at granite. So I can't remember there's calcium and, but yeah, it's basically, we were looking it up while he was getting the returns. We're like, yeah, okay, that's granite. It's like a igneous material. Yeah. And there is small amounts of titanium found in igneous material, but it's usually not like in a crystalline form, and it's oxidized, right? And what we found was like a clear chunk of metal that had been jammed into the crystalline structure. It wasn't part of the stone. It was an obvious artifact. You can see it as an artifact, and when you were
It was isolated.
yes, like a not large, but a clear artifact with defined edges that had a strong titanium return and like very little bit of oxygen. So it was oxidized, but a tiny amount. Not like, it didn't seem like it was part of the original rock, in other words. But it could be new. It could be contamination. The other thing that was interesting that he did, where, we spent a lot of time looking at the surface of these fragments, various, like the inside curve, even parts that had visible to the eye tool marks. And they were very clean. Like he was like, did you guys scrub these or something? And we're like, no, we didn't wash them. There wasn't a lot of anomalies. He was expecting to see a lot more stuff just on them, but they were incredibly clean and very smooth. Even under extreme magnification, where the tool marks are, there was just not a lot of deviation in the surface, right? It was sort of like looking at a topo of a very flat area. That's what it looked like. You could see lines and stuff, but just there was not a lot of difference in the surface, even at strong magnification. This was really interesting. And what was another interesting part was a comparison, because he took a copper bar. He was like, let's make sure it's calibrated right. So he had this copper bar that he had cut off with a saw, and it was, to the eye, a very smooth, shiny surface. Felt smooth, it was like shiny copper. And he stood it up in the test chamber, and we put a vase piece next to it, closed it, pulled a vacuum on it. And then when we looked at it, that edge of the copper that was smooth through the feel, that was incredibly jagged, deep jagged marks from the saw cut. But then we move over to the vase, and it's perfectly smooth, right? I mean, it's just smooth compared to this cut piece of copper. That was really, and of course, he pinged the copper with the mass spec and came back with this huge copper return, which we never got anywhere on the stone. So I don't know, like, like how quickly does copper degrade? Like, this is a question I want to know. Like, if they used copper and they made those things 5, 6, 8,000 years ago, and there was copper remnants left in the stone, would there still be some there? I don't know. Would it completely just completely degrade and go away, or should there be remnants of it?
Well, I think a factor can be the material which they were holding in the vase or in the container that
Okay.
can somehow dissolve it, or I don't know, I'm just speculating, but it can be another factor.
Sure.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. If it was the inside of the vase and the vase was holding some material or some liquid, but the outside wasn't holding anything, right?
Yes.
holding
yeah,
a-
that's true. Yeah.
But he did tell us, he's like, these look washed. And so he did some speculation on like maybe the cutting process was ultrasonic with a liquid. And so the washing was happening during the making of the vases. Because if you've got a slurry going through there, some sort of liquid material carrying a cutting abrasive, and your metal tool is just to like carry the ultrasonic vibration, then basically it's being washed while you're cutting it and polished and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, it looks like incredibly clean.
Yeah, this ultrasonic thing is very interesting. Have you heard about the ultrasonic toothbrushes and how they work?
I know about them. I haven't looked at how they work.
So basically,
It's like a jet of water that's,
no, just the toothbrush. I also have one.
oh,
So there's just the toothbrush which is vibrating the handle is vibrating
Yeah. The bristles. Yeah.
the bristles, the brush part head, and it's creating, so with your saliva and the toothpaste is kind of creating a fluid, obviously, and the toothbrush is generating bubbles in this mixed fluid in your mouth, and these bubbles are kind of removing the plaques from the teeth.
Yeah.
it's breaking it down because of the vibration.
So yeah, cavitation bubbles, especially when they're asymmetrical and they collapse, they make a spike, and it can destroy freaking anything. I mean, it'll just pick particles out of anything, any material.
My dentist explained it to me that this is how these kind of toothbrushes work.
That makes sense. I'm a big proponent of ultrasonic being, I mean, I don't think for sure that the ancient Egyptians had ultrasonic production, like, can they make a tool that can produce ultrasonic vibration down at the tool tip or whatever? That maybe. And that's when one of our conversations on the Egypt tour was about this. Like, how can you simply with like hand-powered mechanical tools make ultrasonic? And you actually had a really good idea that I think we ought to build.
Well, I was drunk.
Are
Probably.
you sure? I don't think so. I mean, it's simple, but you could definitely do it. You just need to have a vibration of a frequency, and 30,000 times per second or 40 somewhere. You can, if you can tune it by just spinning a wheel. That's a really good idea, I think. But so to say that they might have had ultrasonic drilling tools doesn't mean that they had some kind of electrical
Power source.
what's
or
the word?
Electric based tools or machines. Yeah.
Transducer. Right? They don't need an electrical transducer. The whole thing could be mechanical. So there is no transduction of energy into a vibration. They're just literally making the vibration with a mechanical tool, which is possible. And it would help a whole lot to cut through this stone. So why wouldn't they have discovered this or used it?
Chuck showed us some videos of ultrasonic drilling where they're pushing a pipe down into the ground, basically using ultrasonic, right? Like for I don't know, a well or anything like that. So that instead of a quickly rotating bit that's using teeth to chew through the ground, which can take a long time, they have these things that they set it up, and he showed me a video, and like they've got the thing and they've got the pipe in, and it puts some pressure on it, and then as soon as the ultrasonic turns on, it just plunges into the ground, right? And so this technology is used now, and it's like going into rock with this, with this ability. So,
And you can also make star-shaped holes and things like that.
I've seen those.
yeah.
That's interesting. Woodburson experimentation. Try to
Yeah, and I think
make something.
the other thing we talked about with Max and I talked about is if the vases aren't actually vases, if they have some other purpose, if they're components in some system, then maybe that's why they're washed, that they got washed through use. Sort of similar to what you're saying, like they were holding some liquid in it, cleaned them out. But imagine if they were in some system where things are turning or liquid is flowing past them or whatever, like a part in some kind of engine. Now I'm obviously going more advanced, but
Yeah,
then they end up polished and clean
in situ.
because of usage. Yeah. So,
Are you following up on this research, or are you planning on this grid search?
yeah, the follow-up is, the next part of the follow-up is Max is going to contact us when he's done a more comprehensive both side surface scan of the two pieces we left him. We're gonna, he's gonna tell us, like, did he find any more metal fragments? What other returns what other anomalies did he discover? And then I think Ben's gonna put him into contact with possibly Adam and Matt Bell, who have actual like he could get a small vase in the.
He has so many. He can just crash one of those.
Yeah, we joke. Ben and I actually went down and did a show with Matt after hanging out, and we're like, why don't you just break one and send it to him? You got a bunch, bro. And just, but the test chamber, the scanning chamber is, a very small, and then it has a sample table in it. You're supposed to, mount the sample that you want to look at in there, and they're built to look at small things very closely, not large things very closely. So, but Matt has a small rock crystal vase that could probably fit in one of them. But he would only be able to look at the outside, obviously. But yeah, I think it does open the possibility for future research. Like looking at them under the microscope is really fascinating.
I wonder if any museum would be open for bringing out fragments or pieces to a research lab where you have the CT machines, where you have the scanning electron microscopes. I don't know. It would be an interesting research to do because, for example, the Petrie Museum had a lot of fragments as well. Reconstruct or repaired vases and fragments. I don't know. And since this kind of teaching material for Petrie, which we have seen and also we have used for our analysis, probably these are not intact, but kind of less contaminated than other.
But still, clearly, Kyle's right. The best possible would be to get one that's just been uncovered from beneath the step pyramid, and no one touches it, and it gets put into a protective bag or something. And
we are working on kind of a collaboration with Egyptian universities, and hopefully we will get permits to scan some vases in Egyptian museums as well. This kind of application is in progress, but it would be interesting to be in contact with the excavate or the leaders of these excavations under the step pyramid. I don't know if it's even possible to handle or
I would even want to, like, finding those bits of metal stuck in those vase parts makes me want to, like, get some undisturbed sand or dirt material from beneath the step pyramid and just look at that under the microscope and see, like, do we have fragments of anomalous metals in this material? Because it looks like somebody took an enormous collection of vases and stashed them beneath the pyramid, and like, where did they get them from? Did they come from all over the place? Huh?
Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. Egyptian Amazon. Yeah. But, you know, were there other things down there with those vases that has since been taken? Like, we know the place was like looted in antiquity, basically, like a lot of these sites were. And if there were metal objects, they got taken. Even if they weren't gold, somebody would recognize metal and take it.
Yeah, those amounts of fragments we have seen there. And that's just a...
Yeah, somebody was breaking vases to get stuff out of them, or just trampling through them. I don't know. Like, can you imagine what it would have looked like in those tunnels with tens of thousands of whole vases? They would have just been, it would have been crammed full, right? It's not like they lined the walls. It would have just, you just pack them in and fill the tunnels. And you have to dig a tunnel around the vases to get to the back of the tunnel. That's why there's a labyrinth down there.
I wonder how many tunnels are still not excavated.
Yeah. So I would be interested to know if there's like what's in the dirt down there. I mean, they're just digging it out, but like, is there interesting material in the sand itself that might tell us some stuff about those vases?
Well, I hope we can move forward with this kind of research and maybe open some new doors and raise the interest of academia and these kind of groups to collaborate, because I think this is just amazing that those information we can figure out with the scanning and the electron microscopy and these analysis. Thank you guys for joining me on the show. It was a pleasure to meet you and to talk with you. And I hope we will have more chats, and we will have more things to do on Monday.
Yes.
Yep.
But yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure, and I'm really glad that you are here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Cheers, buddy.
Thank you. A massive thank you to my first incredible Patreon supporters, Oannes, Sarah Cox, and Vasana. Your generosity fuels this journey into ancient technology, keeping this show alive and pushing my research further than ever. As the ancient Egyptians would say, Ankh Veja Seneb.